All right, thanks so much, Al. Well, this morning on today's Health, the science of sweating, we all do it, especially in the summer, can be embarrassing at times, but when does it become a problem? And what are the best treatments? Dr. Keri Peterson is an internist and contributor to Women's Health magazine. Dr. Peterson, good morning.
Good morning, Natalie.
We all sweat. Me on my third run up the stairs today, really breaking out into a sweat. But for a lot of people, there are actually real reasons why they sweat. Let's talk about the biology of it first. What's happening as we're sweating?
Well, first, very simply, the reason we sweat is to cool our bodies down. We are warm-blooded mammals, and we must maintain a constant body temperature in order to survive. So whenever our temperature goes up, we bring it down with sweating, and it can go up for any number of reasons. First, just this gorgeous day, this warm weather.
Right.
Under stress, when you're anxious, it creates the release of stress hormones, which causes your body temperature to go up. Even simple bodily functions like digestion and breathing can cause our body temperature to go up, and then we sweat to bring it down.
So what's actually happening in our body then?
So what happens is when our body temperature goes up, our brain tells our sweat center, which is called the sympathetic nervous system, to release an impulse. This impulse goes into all the thousands of nerves in our body, and when it hits the sweat glands, there's a chemical released called acetylcholine. That's a chemical that's targeted for treatment. And the acetylcholine causes the sweat glands to release the fluid, which is about 99% water and 1% salt.
Well, some people, though, they sweat excessively, and it can be very embarrassing.
That is correct. First off, the average person sweats about 1.5 ounces a day, which is about a shot glass worth. But for people that sweat excessively, this is called hyperhidrosis. It affects about 3% of the population, and they sweat about 7 ounces a day, which is a lot more. And like you said, it causes a lot of social embarrassment.
That's right. And when you mentioned what's in our sweat, 99% water, 1% salt.
Yes.
So a lot of people may wonder, well, where does the bad odor come from then? So what triggers the smell?
Sweat itself is odorless. The smell comes from glands that sit right next to the sweat gland. These are called the apocrine glands. They release this oily substance, and when that gets released to the surface of the skin, bacteria that sits on our skin breaks it down into this acid, and it's the acid that we smell.
Let's talk about ways to control sweat, of course. And there is actually, I didn't know this, a difference, though, between deodorant and antiperspirant. What is that?
There is. Antiperspirant is a sweat blocker, whereas deodorant is for the odor. Two separate purposes.
And so if you sweat profusively, you probably want more of the antiperspirant, right?
Yes. So the treatment options for sweating start with an over-the-counter antiperspirant, and this contains aluminum zirconium, and it works to block the sweat glands simply by causing the ducts to swell, and then the sweat can't escape. And we have several here that we can see, including the clinical strength Secret, which is a higher percentage of this aluminum zirconium. It contains 20%. There's even a prescription antiperspirant called Drysol, and this has aluminum chloride in it, which is even more effective than some of these topicals. And with any of these, they should be applied to dry skin, so they should be applied at night. Most people think
at night.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Most people think to put it on in the morning,
right after you shower.
Right.
But your skin's going to be moist.
That's correct. So if you put it on at night, it's more effective. And if you're using it twice a day, that may be too irritating. So if you just put it on at night, that's the best bet.
Okay, and there are other ways as well. I mean, I've heard of actually for people who are excessive sweaters that you can get Botox in the armpits, the forehead.
That's right.
It's not a cheap option. It's going to be expensive. And how often would something like that? Would you have to do that?
Well, Botox, which is FDA approved for hyperhidrosis, so it is safe, is very effective for the armpits, for the forehead, and you can even use it on the hands and the soles of the feet, although there is a risk of some weakness of the muscles underlying the skin. So that's one concern. It lasts about 8 months. I do it in my office. Patients love it, and it's very effective, but it is expensive. It costs about $800 for one treatment.
Okay, and on both sides, if your armpits or wherever, right? So you have to add all of that up. Okay.
Yes.
Also, oral medication. I know that there are other ways. There are things that need to be prescription as well.
That is a great option for people that sweat excessively diffusely and in their face, which obviously you can't put topicals or Botox on. So there is a drug called Robenol, which it blocks that acetylcholine that we talked about earlier. It can be taken once a day, but it does have side effects, so it's not for everybody. And then as a last resort, there is surgical option. This is for extreme cases. And this is quite interesting. What this does, it's called a sympathectomy, and it actually cuts out the nerve center that causes excessive sweating. And by doing so, it can block all of the sweating in the armpits and in the palms of the hands.
And just really quickly, it can be a symptom, though, of some other medical conditions. What else should you be aware of?
That is true. So if you don't have primary hyperhidrosis and there's an underlying cause, it can be due to thyroid disease, adrenal disease, menopause, good old hot flashes, certain medications like antidepressants, and lymphoma and leukemia. They can cause night sweats.
Okay, so be sure to check with your doctor if you are sweating excessively.
Yes.
Dr. Keri Peterson, great to have you here to contribute again to Women's Health Magazine. Appreciate it.